Welcome to Etto and Clarkie Sports Podcast. I'm Etto and I'm joined by Clarkie. Clarkie, how are
Good, mate. How are you? Hello, everyone. As always, very good this week. It's been a long week, a stressful week, but it's good to be on and getting it all done again. So, hello.
you? It is good. It's been a little while in the making. We recorded last week, but some technical difficulties happened to that recording, so
Oh, didn't they just?
they did. So we couldn't upload it. So we're gonna try and cut down the episode lengths in the future. Obviously, last time we recorded was an hour and a half. This one should be a little less long, I should say. We're going to go through just the AFL and the NRL, touch on some other sports as well, but we're not going to touch on a lot of the other sports like we have in the past. So just to get it in that 20 to 30 minute range to listen to. We'll touch on the NRL first, Clarkie. You're the big NRL fan between the two of us. How's the results been in the last 2 weeks, and who's sitting on top of the ladder?
Yeah, I'll quickly run through just last round, so round 6, which we obviously recorded but had the issue. But so on Thursday, you had the Knights and the Broncos. Knights running out 21-point winners there, 27-6. Rabbitohs beat the Warriors 40-12. Panthers had a big upset. Well, class as an upset win against the Storm, 21-14. The Dragons beat the Titans 20-8. West Tigers won 36-20 against the North Queensland Cowboys. You had the Roosters running over the top-sided Eels 24-10, and the Sea Eagles beat the Raiders 14-6, and the Sharks beat the Bulldogs in a close one 20-18. So that rounded out round 6. The ladder didn't change too much in round 6. Parramatta was still top, and then this week we got round 7. Obviously, there was a game last night between Penrith and South Sydney Rabbitohs. Panthers running out 8-point victors there. So that puts them at the moment top of the ladder, I believe. And at the moment, nearly just under 20 minutes left. We've got Storm and the Warriors. And at the moment, I will say the scores. Storm's currently on 42 to the Warriors 6. So a massive bounce back from the Storm. So obviously expected, but not by that much, I wouldn't think. Then you've got later on again tonight, you got the Roosters and the Dragons, Cowboys and Knights tomorrow, Broncos and Titans, so a bit of a derby there. Eels and Raiders, another good game. Eagles and Sharks, Bulldogs, Tigers to round out the round. So the ladder currently sitting, the live ladder, you've got Panthers on top with 11 points, 5 wins, 1 draw, 1 loss. Eels in second with only the 1 loss, 5 wins. Knights third, Roosters fourth, Raiders, Storm, Sea Eagles, and the Rabbitohs round out the top 8, and then down the bottom you've got from bottom up Titans, Bulldogs, Broncos, Warriors, Dragons, Sharks, Cowboys, and the Tigers just sitting outside the top 8. So been a very interesting NRL season, and it will obviously continue later on tonight, and we'll touch on that more next week. But a few good results in there, and a couple of teams really pushing on well. So there you have it.
Very good. We also had overnight. We had Liverpool win the EPL. They won 4-0, beating Crystal Palace to be champions of the EPL. I think it was something like 30 years in the making that it took them
30,
to win.
30 years waiting, mate.
Took them to win the title. So the Reds on
as
the board.
As you would say, Kyle, it's a long time between drinks, and
certainly is.
Liverpool would have a fair few of them. So
yeah, it is. We'd like to plug our major sponsor, BJ Media. Thank you for sponsoring this episode of the podcast. This is obviously episode 2 and 3 put into one video. Obviously, the hoodie is here. Hit us up if you want to buy one, and we'll hit you up with your hoodie from BJ Media. We did have Jared on here, or Dob, last week, but the recording buggered up. But we'll go through our NRL round 7 tips. I believe we are up to round 7. I'll let you go first, Clarkie, with your tips for the rest of the round.
Yes, mate. So my tips for the NRL this round were Penrith last night, which I got that right. Obviously, sticking with my team, I went the Melbourne Storm, which is looking a shoe-in at the moment. Then you've got the Sydney Roosters. I went Newcastle, Brisbane. I picked Parramatta again. I think their form's too strong. And then Manly, and I rounded out the round by picking the Tigers as well on Sunday. So currently 2 from 2, and hopefully can keep that going. Who'd you pick, Edo?
Yeah, very good. Last night I went the Panthers. Went the Storm today. Not really a big Storm fan. Not really a big NRL fan, but went the Storm. The Roosters, the Knights, the Broncos, the Eels, the Sharks.
Ooh,
Yeah,
geez.
had to throw one in there.
Jeez.
The West
Jeez.
Tigers to round off the round. So the Sharks are my
Only one.
roughie for the week.
I can tell, mate. That's a big roughie, but see how that one pans out, mate. We'll touch on that one next week.
Paying $2.18 on our sports bet, so see how that goes. Keen to get into a little bit of AFL, talk a bit of AFL. We'll spend most of our time each week speaking on the AFL, as it's mainly the sport we watch most here on the podcast. So we'll quickly touch on the AFL. We had the round 3 preview, which is the last week. Obviously, it was a really big round in footy last week. We had Hawthorn defeating the Tigers on the Thursday night by 32 points, and it was a pretty comprehensive win by the Tigers in the end. Richmond never looked in the game from the start of the game. They were out of it from probably 5 minutes into the first quarter, Clarkie.
Yeah, they were woeful, mate. I think it more comes down to, I don't know, there's been a lot of theories thrown out there. I know Dusty Martin didn't play, but like we said, I don't think one player makes that much of a difference. I think teams are just adapting to Richmond's style of play, learning how to play them and just keep them out of the game. And I mean, Hawthorn did that really well. And if other teams can pick up on that, Richmond aren't going to be the threat that they have been in recent seasons. But yeah, Hawthorn, very impressive they were on Thursday night.
Yeah, we had on the Friday night, we had the Doggies and the Giants. Now, the Dogs bounced back with a win. They're now 2 in a row. We'll touch on their win last night a little bit later. But they beat the Giants at Marvel Stadium 8-9, 57 to 4-9, 33. Pretty dismal performance there from the Giants after being grand finalists last year. And they've, to be honest, they've started, after the shutdown, they've started really poor.
Yeah, I think they're a much better side than what they've shown the last 2 weeks. Yeah, I think that game surprised me. I definitely didn't pick the Doggies to win, especially after their game. I think in round 2 against the Saints was pretty dismal. So Giants need a lift, and I think they will. I think they're too much of a quality side to not lift. So very disappointing from them. But the Dogs are looking strong at the moment.
Yeah, very good. Standouts from the game for this game was Jack McRae, 25 touches. Cornelio, 24, but probably the standout for the Giants was Harry Perriman, 23 touches and kicked 2. So he probably gets the votes for the Giants. But yeah, McRae there with 25. He probably gets the 3 for the game. Now we move on to the first Saturday afternoon game. Now this game brought a lot of controversy to it at around 3/4 time or half time. Somewhere between there was rumours coming out that an AFL player had tested positive to COVID-19. Now, that eventually came out and Gill had a press conference and it was Connor McKenna, but that's now came back negative. We don't know what's happening there. I'd say he'd still have to stay in the 14-day quarantine just to keep everyone safe. But yeah, that was probably one of the weirder games in the last round, but the Swans got it done away from home, 10-11, 71 to 8-12, 60. So, big win from the Saints there on the road. Obviously, North Melbourne looking good this year, but 12 behinds, that never wins you a game of footy.
No, mate. And the Swans on the road, sorry. I said Saints by accident, but I'll get you on there. Yeah, the Swans were impressive. I think both sides missed a lot of chances. Sydney have missed a lot of chances since since the season's restarted anyway. But that proved to be a pretty good win from them. I mean, a lot of people would have tipped North Melbourne, I believe, after the way they played against the Giants previously. So, no, good win by the Swans. And, yeah, it'd be nice to see him keep that momentum flowing with the, if you would say, rebuilding young side. So, no, they were impressive, mate.
Yeah, they definitely were. Joy Simpkin had 26 touches and kicked one for the Roos. Standout players for the Swans was probably Kennedy, 20 goals, 22 touches, sorry. For JK, Ollie Florent, star as always, 22. Lloyd, 22 as well. The Dog loves a little bit of Jake Lloyd. Move on to the second game in the afternoon was Collingwood and the St Kilda Saints. I was looking at this one before, but 12-9-81 to 5-7-37. Now, it was a pretty good first 5 minutes of this game. The Saints looked in the game until about 15 minutes into the first quarter, where Collingwood just blew them out of the water, and 5 goals 3 to 2 goals 1 at quarter time. Probably won on the game, only 3 goals up, but end up winning, yeah, as I said, by 44 points. So Collingwood are looking pretty good, Clarkie, and it's fair to say it's not a good look because once they get to finals, they're a pretty good team and hard to stop in the finals. So they've started really well after they shut down the Pies.
Yeah, mate, the good old collie wobbles. No, they have looked good. And I reckon that second quarter was massive. They kicked 5 goals 1 in the second quarter. So very impressive early, the Pies, and I think they're going to be rolling on strong. Obviously, they play later on tonight as we record this. But, yeah, it's a hard team to beat, the Pies. I mean, you had pretty much standard standouts for them as well in Sidebottom and Pendlebury. I mean, Sidebottom was massive. You look at the stats: 6 tackles, 5 marks, 31 disposals, and a goal. It's a pretty handy day out. So,
yep.
Sidebottom very impressive, and Brad Hill for the Saints was probably one of their only shining lights along with Jay Gresham. But yeah, Pendlebury and Sidebottom just hard to stop at the moment.
Yeah, Pendlebury 31 touches, 1 goal. Probably takes the cake for the 3 in the Brownlow, I reckon.
Yeah, Sidebottom there was very good. Yeah, you'd give the 3 to Sidey, Pendle's 2, and I don't know, would you slip Crisp in there for the 1, or would you give it to Hill? I'm not sure, but very impressive from the Magpies brigade, and I think they'll roll on.
Yeah, very good. Moving to the first Saturday night game of the week last week now. Lucky you guys didn't see the podcast that came out last week because my prediction for this game was horribly wrong. And
we just say it anyway. You can't shy away here, mate. We're an honest podcast.
I'm not too sure I can say it, but lucky. So my mic didn't record the last podcast, so
lucky you.
Didn't record last podcast, and I said the Cats would win by 15 goals plus. Ended up losing by 2 points, but you can't expect to win a game of football by winning by playing one good quarter of footy. So Carlton got the job done in Geelong, which you never say. Teams hardly ever win down in Geelong, but credit to Carlton, they played really well and blew Geelong out of the water in the first quarter. So they won 12-7, 79 to defeat Geelong 11-11, 77. Now 5 first quarter goals to 1 goal, 2 to the Cats. Pretty much wins you the game of footy in the shortened quarters, but yeah, they dominated Geelong from the outset and just kept on going till the third quarter, and they shut up shop and nearly lost, but they hung on in the end.
Yeah, I will add Eddie Betts with an absolute game-saving tackle as well. I think it was the one that saved them there. I would have said if that tackle wasn't made, Geelong would have won that, but very impressive from Carlton. They jumped out the gates hot, and Geelong had no answer up until the fourth quarter, which is obviously, like you said, too little, too late.
Yep.
It's hard to play catch up, especially in shortened quarters, and you've only got 1 quarter to make up that much ground. So credit to Geelong for throwing throwing it all at Carlton, but then you got to credit Carlton for hanging on as well. So very impressive from the Blues.
Yeah, they definitely threw their weight around for the first 3 quarters, but 3 votes probably goes to Patrick Cripps, 24 touches and 2 goals. Doherty probably gets 2 as well, and I reckon they've got to chuck 1 in there for Geelong. I reckon Mitch Duncan played an outstanding game of footy. He had 24 touches as well, 13 kicks, 11 handballs. He probably takes the 1 vote. Maybe you could give it to Eddie Betts. I mean, Eddie Betts had 12 touches and kicked 2.
Yeah,
But yeah,
No, I agree. I think Duncan was good. Had he kicked straight though, Geelong probably would have won the game. He had 2 behinds. So
yeah,
again, if it was me, I mean, going off not fantasy points, I'm going more impact on the game late. I think Eddie Betts made a big scalp in that game and really played well. So I'd almost give Betts the 1 or even the 2, in my opinion.
yep. And now the game that was on the Gabba, the Lions and the Eagles. The Lions won 10-14. Now that is a lot of behinds. Obviously a few rush in there as well. But 10 goals, 14-74, defeating the Eagles 6 goals, 8-44. So they led at quarter time. The Eagles, they led at quarter time. They led at half time, and that's about it. Really, they got blown out of the water after that, and the Lions won by 5 goals. Standout players, Lachie Neale gets the 3, 32 touches and 2 goals. Gaff maybe gets 1, had 30 touches, kicked 2 behinds. McCluggage 26 and Jared Lyons 25. Tim Kelly had 17 from the Eagles as well. So standout performance, Lachie Neale, absolute jet.
It's something else. He's a very good footballer, and will definitely get 3 votes. I think Brisbane should have won by more, in my opinion. You look at the stats, 50 inside 50s to 34, and Brisbane's efficiency, they only had 25 shots from their 50 inside 50s, so only 50%. I think that could mean a 10-goal win if Brisbane had taken a few more chances. But then again, West Coast really struggling at the minute.
They are. They're blaming it on the hub, but now I'm not too sure that's the problem, considering the other teams are going better than the Eagles. But I don't think you can blame the hub there.
No. It'd be interesting to see how they recoup, but at the moment, I can't see them finding much good form just yet.
Neither can I. So, the first Sunday afternoon game. Now, I know you'd love to see this, Clarkie. Obviously, you got a few Adelaide mates that go for the Crows, but this game, 12 goals 10, 82 to 4 goals 5, 29. The Gold Coast Suns defeat the Crows. Now, they're looking really good at the Crows after the shutdown. They've won, I think they've only dropped the 1 game, and I think it was back in round 1. So, yeah, 12 goals 10, 82 to 4 goals 5, 29. Now, Matty Rowell, he's dominated both games, only had the 20 touches this game, but kicked the 2, took Miller 26 and kicked 1. Probably the standout for the Suns, but yeah, Matty Rowell's getting all the attention out of the Gold Coast Suns in Carrara.
If you haven't heard the rumour, everyone, Matt Rowell can't catch coronavirus because coronavirus can't catch him. So, Matty Rowell looks an absolute star, and what a pickup for the Suns, and it's good to finally see one of their high draft picks actually performing right off the bat. I think what they've been waiting for. I know they got a lot of quality players, but you look at picks they have received, this is the one that's really blown out the gates and lived up to the potential. So Matty Rowell, what a star. On the other side of it, the Adelaide Crows, I mean, where do you start? Is there any positives you can take from that? In my opinion, probably not. I mean, I watched the game, and I don't mean this in any other way because maybe I supported rival team, but there was no positives for mine in Adelaide. They looked like they instantly dropped their heads at quarter time. Never looked a threat. And if I was if you're a Crows fan, they didn't score in the first quarter. It's just, where do they go from here? I mean, Suns could have made it worse. They had 2 goals 7 in the first quarter. Like, this game, it was a training drill. I mean, Crows kicked 3 goals in the last quarter.
Yes.
When Gold Coast are taking the foot off the gas, it's hard to see where the Crows go from here, mate. I don't know. I just look at it and I'm still stunned because I didn't think the Crows would be as bad as a lot of people predicted them to be second bottom or wooden spoon, but they are worse than that.
Yeah, well, 58 points down at 3/4 time, as it was 10 goals 8 to 1 goal 4. So they were dominating the Crows, the Suns.
Yeah, no, very, very worrying signs for the Adelaide Crows.
I don't think it's all the coach's fault, though, because I don't think Matty Nix is that bad of a coach. I think it's just the playing group maybe aren't as good as they think they are. Because Matty Nicks ain't a bad coach. Obviously, the game plan they're trying to implement may not be the best, but obviously, a first year coach in the AFL system.
He's got a lot of experience, Matty Nicks, and that's what But you can't expect someone to come in and make a change instantly. You can only coach what you've got in front of you, and like you said, Kyle, whether it's a mix of players thinking they're above what they really are, or I know they lost a lot of players in the off season, but you heard a lot of, I don't know if you guys hear much of it, but a lot of the media in Adelaide, claiming they weren't really in our best 22, these players, and I think we won't be as bad as everyone thinks. But I tell you what, you'd have to have a look in the mirror, because either they're not enjoying their football or they just don't want to be playing AFL football, because they are a very, very, and it's not just the fact that they're getting beaten. When teams rebuild, we expect that, but they are a very boring team to watch. There's no effort there. I'm always one for, I don't mind a team getting beaten, but if you're not going down and having an effort and having a crack, then you might as well not be out there. So, in my opinion, if I was a Crows fan, I'd be filthy.
Yeah. Well, we move on to the last game of the Sunday of last round. It was obviously Freo and Port Adelaide. I watched most of this game. Little scrappy game, fair to say. It was fairly wet up on the Gold Coast with a heavy downpour. But Port Adelaide won 10-10, 70 to 6-5, 21. Pretty good win in the end from the pair. Led most of the game. But yeah, in the end, just the class above the Dockers.
Yeah, I think Freo played really well, especially at the start. First quarter was very up and down, bit of goal for goal, and then the rain set in at the start of the second quarter, and I think that's where Freo just fell out of favour. I think Port just handled the conditions really well.
Yep.
And their game stepped up, and you can see that anyway. They kicked, 5 goals in the second quarter and missed a couple of chances as well. So they just really handled the conditions well, and then like you said, just performed and just saw the rest of the game out in a pretty professional manner. Not many worrying signs from myself as a Port fan. Maybe letting a couple of late ones slide, or maybe taking the foot off the gas a bit. But in conditions like that, you can't really blame him, and a pretty professional win.
Yeah, 3 votes probably goes to Boak, 26 touches, 1 goal. Ollie Wine's pretty good as well, 25 and 1. They're probably 3. 2. Nat Fife probably gets 1. Played really well, 23 touches and 1 goal, and single-handedly tried to bring them back into the game to the last quarter.
I think that's one thing Freo is going to struggle with. I mean, every week you're seeing the same 2 guys trying to lift them over the line, and that's Fife and Walters, and they can't do it on their own. And it is unfortunate, because I obviously sat and watched that game, and Fife and Walters were brilliant. I couldn't fault them at all. I mean, the only time they got caught or gave the ball up is when they're trying to take the game on. But when you're down and you're looked at as leaders, it's the only thing you can do. So, full credit to Fife and Walters, absolute superstars, and it'd be handy if they had a bit more support.
Yeah, very good. But the last game that was meant to be played on the Sunday was Essendon and Melbourne, but obviously is getting rescheduled due to the positive test of COVID-19 for Connor McKenna. We'll move on to this round. We've had 1 game completed already, which was last night, which was the Doggies and Doggies in Sydney. Sorry, Doggies came out on top. Now this is a really good win away. 10-7-67, defeating the Swans 5-9-39. Played well for most of the game. Sydney, but coming back into it, Papley dominated. Kicking 4 goals. Bontempelli dominates as always, and the Cray. Probably the biggest news to come out of that game was Norton injured with his ankle, and Naismith with a possible rupture to his ACL.
Dogs very impressive again. Swans really struggling. Well, it looked like it last night when I sat and watched that one. I mean, they just can't seem to get. Whether it's a game plan issue, I don't know, because it just seems like the style of play they're playing isn't consistent, if you know what I mean there, Kyle. I mean,
yep.
The game plan against the Bombers was another one where, they just couldn't seem to get it moving, whether that's the opposition they're playing. But then against North Melbourne, it was pretty good. It worked all their way. And then again last night, just really poor. So maybe it's just one of them balancing consistency issues. But, I mean, with a young side, it's expected to happen, but pretty disappointing considering they did have their chances.
Yeah, very good. Pretty good game, as I said in the end last night, but the Doggies just ran away with it. And obviously, Luke Parker, 25 touches. Now, the game is happening at the moment, which is the Giants and the Magpies. It's currently 2 points apiece, 13 minutes into the first quarter. So, we don't really have anything to touch over that, but we'll quickly run through our AFL tips for round 4. I'll let you go first, Clarkie.
Okay, mate, you're a gentleman. So last night I went with the Swans. I haven't seemed to be having as much luck in the AFL that I have with the NRL tipping, but I don't think anyone has the way this season's already started. So, yeah, Swans got that wrong. Tipped the Pies tonight. I mean, but then with my gut, I think the Giants might actually get the win. I tipped Port tomorrow over the Eagles. I've tipped Richmond over the Saints, but then my gut's telling me St. Kilda might get them as well. Tipped Carlton over the Bombers. I'm pretty confident in that one. Obviously, they're not the favourites, but Carlton, a pretty good side in my opinion. Gold Coast, I reckon, will get another win.
Yep.
Brisbane will beat Adelaide. Geelong will win again, and I think the Hawks will also win again. So there's my tips.
Yep, very good. I'll run through mine. I went for Sydney last night. Can't really fault Sydney being up in Sydney. Wouldn't really think they'd lose, but obviously they did. Went for the Giants tonight, obviously just based because it's up in Giants Stadium. So I went Port Adelaide over the Eagles. I went St Kilda over Richmond in Maddie's match. I went for Carlton over the Bombers at the G. Went for Gold Coast over Freo. The Lions over Adelaide. Geelong, hopefully they get back on the winners list. Geelong over Melbourne and Hawthorn over North Melbourne. So, pretty good round of footy, and it's so good to have the footy back and to actually do something on the weekends now rather than just sitting around doing nothing. It's really good to have live sport back. We'll quickly run through the hot topics of the last 2 weeks, Clarkie. There's been some big ones. Obviously, this hot topic was out of the Port Adelaide game. Xavier Dersma pulled his hammy. Looked bad at first glance, but obviously the results came back and isn't as bad as they were expecting. So, good signs there for Port Adelaide and Xavier Dersma.
Yep. Watched that game, and I was pretty shattered when I seen the young fella go to kick that one inside 50 and pull up like that. He looked like he was in a lot of pain. I think, like a lot of people have said, looked worse than it actually is. I think that maybe comes down to the young fella maybe not having too many of them injuries before, and maybe just letting the panic set into himself as well. Obviously, he's been playing pretty consistent footy since being drafted, and was sad to see him get injured. But luckily, it's only I think what I said was a 4 to 5 week injury. So. Yep. Not too bad. Could have been a lot worse for the young fella. So, no, lucky that it's not as bad as first thought, but hopefully he has a very quick recovery.
Yeah, very good. And news just came in about the final teams for this weekend's games. And this is a big one coming out of Adelaide. One of their big stars has been dropped in Matt Crouch. Now, this is a really big story to come out of Adelaide. He's one of their better players on their list. And one of the better midfielders, obviously, in their midfield, but they've dropped Matt Crouch.
Yeah, that one surprises me. I think, obviously, we don't have the inside look, and we're not the coaches, but I think he's definitely in their best 3 to 4 every week, and I don't understand the reasoning behind it. Whether there's a fallout, which I'm not sure. Yeah, it's actually hit me for a 6 because he's one of them players where you look at their list and the way they've been playing, I'd have about 20 other blokes I'd drop before him.
Yeah, very good player.
At least. And to see him dropped, Seedsman as well is another one that shocked me a little bit. But yeah, to see Matt Crouch go out for the likes of some of the ones that are replacing him, very strange call, I think.
Yep. Obviously, Jordan Gallucci from Adelaide as well has torn his Achilles. and is out for 12 months. So that's big news as well out of Adelaide. So they can't get any good news coming out of West Lakes.
Couldn't catch a break at the minute, the Crows. So very unfortunate for them. Yeah, not good for them, but it is what it is, and I'm sure they're a professional football club, and I'm sure they'll manage that the best they can. But very unfortunate for Jordan, and wish him also a very promising recovery. Obviously, not a good injury at all, especially to be out for the rest of the season when he's already waited so long to play. So very unfortunate.
Yep. Alex Johnson. Now, this is not good news. Obviously, he's retired from AFL footy, or he's not retired from AFL footy. He got delisted from Sydney not too long ago. He was going to be playing VFL with the Northern Blues. Obviously, the VFL season's abandoned. But he's playing for the Zavarians. I think that's how you pronounce it, in Melbourne. He was playing for them, training with them, and has torn his ACL. Now, this is his 7th ACL, so is it going to be curtains for his AFL career? I know he's only playing country, kind of metropolitan footy, really, if it's fair to say. Is he going to call curtains on his career, or is he going to keep playing? I reckon after seven ACLs, you'd probably give it up. I'd probably give it up after 2, but 7, yeah, we'll see how we go. But that's not good for the young man.
Very, very sad. Obviously, another player that had a lot of potential, but riddled by injury. And I think, like you said, Kyle. I mean, 7's a lot. They say you only get 9 lives, mate, and 7. And he's never really had a crack to get his AFL career. I think you'd pull the pin. Sad as it is, health does come first, and if that's going to keep happening, and it's obviously against his control, there comes a time, as they say, a time in a man's life where you just got to make that call. So if I was him, I'd have to, you got to start thinking about these things, and unfortunately, I think that's his AFL dream done.
Yep. And also Sam Naismith, the big story out of last night, ruptured his ACL playing for Sydney against the Bulldogs. Yeah, he's ruptured his ACL. The scans confirmed that he will be out for 12 months as well, which is pretty sad news out of Sydney as well, which he's only just came back. He's had a rough few months. Obviously, his sister passed away as well from cancer, and obviously the shutdown as well through the 12 weeks. So that's happened between then and 2 games back. I think it was his second game back, but he's torn his ACL, which is not good.
No, not much good news floating around the league at the minute, and it is very unfortunate. But these are the things that we have to manage, obviously, when you're a footballer, and it's very unfortunate. Yeah,
it is. And just to, unfortunately, keep that bad news coming through, and obviously last night to yesterday, John Kennedy Sr. passed away at the age of 91, I believe. John Kennedy's record, we'll quickly run through his record. Played 164 games and scored 29 goals for Hawthorn between 1950 and 1959. Club captain 1955 to 1959. Won the best and fairest for his club 1950, 1951, 1952 and 1954. State captain of Victoria in 1957, played 4 state games for Victoria, coached 412 games for Hawthorn and North Melbourne, 1957, 1960 to 1963, 1967 to 1976, 1985 to 1989. So, 3-time VFL Premiership coach, 1961, 1971, 1976, 2-time Night Premiership coach, 1968 and 1969, coach of Victoria. Hawthorn Team of the Century, was inducted in 2001. Inducted to the Australian Football Hall of Fame in 1996 as a coach, and inducted into the Hawthorn Hall of Fame as a legend in 2003, and had a chair on the AFL Commission 1993 to 1997. So a legend of the AFL football. I put a post up on the podcast Facebook page yesterday, just saying how sad it was, and obviously a legend of AFL. Rest in peace now.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, obviously, his stats speak alone, and stats don't show a great man either. So, I mean, what a great man he was. I mean, obviously, a lot of people have a lot of praise for him, and like you said, his highlight reel and all of his achievements is a massive list. So, may he rest in peace. And very sad news, and thoughts go out to the Kennedy family and extended family, and the likes of Josh Kennedy having to play his 250th game last night under those circumstances as well. What a man! So, very sad, and hopefully everyone manages that well. But yeah, rest in peace, John. And he's a very, very talented man and a very important person in the history of the Hawthorn Footy Club and our game. So, very sad news.
Yeah, it is. But we'll try and lighten up that news now with the AFL hub that's going to be introduced in round 6 and round 7. Now, it's probably good news for WA people, obviously Victorian. I couldn't really care that Geelong is going over there. I'm sure Victorian Collingwood fans couldn't care they're going over there either. I'd much rather watch my team play in a stadium full of fans in an empty stadium. So the round 6 fixture was released. We'll start off with the Thursday night game. It's Geelong v St Kilda at Marvel. Friday night, Collingwood v Brisbane. And then the Saturday afternoon games, Freo Melbourne, West Coast Adelaide, Hawthorn Gold Coast, Essendon Bulldogs. Sunday game is Port Adelaide the Giants, Carlton Sydney, North Melbourne Richmond. And the first game in the hub is on the Friday night, 17th of July, round 7. Thursday night game is Essendon Hawthorn. First game of the hub, Geelong Collingwood. Saturday afternoon game, Sydney Brisbane, Melbourne Bulldogs, Gold Coast Carlton, North Melbourne Adelaide. Sunday games, St Kilda Port Adelaide, Richmond Giants, Freo and West Coast. So there, that's the fixture for the round 6 and round 7. Obviously, the hub starts in round 7. What are your thoughts on the hub in WA, Clarkie? I know Port Adelaide are in the Queensland hub at the moment. Obviously, fans can be let into the grounds in those states and can't be let in Victoria at the moment due to the coronavirus still going around. So I don't mind the idea of a hub. Obviously, Geelong going over there can play in front of 35,000 fans. So I'm not against it.
I'm a big fan. Like you said, the hub idea. I mean, Port Adelaide have been in the hub for a while, and we will be until round 6. I like the idea. Like you said, it's good to have it in front of fans if it's all monitored correctly. And I've had no issues with the hubs at all. I haven't had any complaints about, major complaints about Port playing up in Queensland. But the only one recently is going by state announcements here in South Australia. We've said that there's a capacity of 25,000 allowed at the Adelaide Open. But the two Adelaide sides have been fixtured to go to a state that's, well, we will say riddled at the moment in Victoria with COVID-19, and on our way back home, we're getting put into games in Melbourne. That's what I'm not happy with. That doesn't make sense to me. Running that risk of putting us into, Victoria and then having us to come home, whenever that may be, we'll obviously have to quarantine for 2 weeks when the South Australian government has already claimed that there will be allowed to have fans at the Adelaide Oval. So I don't know why they wouldn't move a hub to Adelaide. It's beyond me. But like you said, the Perth hub's a great idea. The Queensland hub's a great idea. And now that SA's opened its doors, I can't see why the 2 SA teams and a couple more can't come down here to Adelaide. I don't know about your thoughts, but I think you can understand my argument there.
Yep. So after round, I think they play 3 games in the hub. I think Geelong play Collingwood, West Coast, and Freo. So after round 10, there'll most likely be another hub. So I'm guessing if all is still going well in other states, I'm guessing that Adelaide will probably get a hub then. Obviously, we'll see how Victoria are going. Maybe Victoria can have some fans in the crowd. Obviously, that's in 4 weeks' time, so that's in the middle of July. So maybe here in Victoria, maybe some restrictions are being eased, but at the moment, I can't really see that happening due to 185 active cases as of today. So,
well, that's what I mean. By the time that new hub comes in, maybe half these sides that are going to be put into Victoria are going to contract the virus. So I think it's a bit risky, but like you said, they've got to wait the 3 weeks and play everyone if that's how the hub's set out. But I think the Melbourne one could have been done a little bit better. But no, we'll see what happens. Hopefully it's all managed quite well and the clubs can stay healthy.
Yep. We'll quickly go through Clarkie's multi of the week and then we'll wrap the show up. What's your multi looking like, Clarkie?
So the multi of the week, we've gone with Greater Western Sydney head-to-head.
Yeah.
Port Adelaide 1-39 against the Eagles. We've gone Carlton head-to-head. And sorry, Crows fans, but I think with the selections, Dane Zorko coming in, Brisbane very quick attacking game style. Adelaide, I think, going too tall for my liking. Getting rid of all, a few of their quicks as well. I think Brisbane by over 10 goals. So Brisbane at the line of 60.5 at $5.30. That puts the multi up to, at a power play of $53.19, and I've got 5 on that to get 270 back. So I'm obviously not 100% confident, but I think for only putting $5 on it, it's not a bad one to get on.
Yeah, not a bad multi. Get onto that, and if it gets up, we'll let you know all about it next week. As we just finish it up, it's currently 8:20 here in Victoria. Collingwood lead 2 goals 2-14 to the Giants 1-3-9. So that's all we have time for here on the Etto and Clarkie Sports Podcast. Thank you for joining us for episode 2 and 3. Put into the same episode. We're going to try and release them on every Friday. So recording will happen on Thursday. We're going to try and release them on a Friday. So we will try and stick that schedule. Obviously, it's a busy time around the end of financial year in the retail sectors and all sectors of work. So just bear with us if we can't get them out on time. But we will definitely have a podcast out each week. So thank you for joining me again, Clarkie. Hopefully we can get the Dob on next week. Hopefully he's not busy.
Yeah, no, I'm sure we'll get him on. But no, thank you, Kyle, and thanks everyone for listening. And we'll be back next week.
No, thank you. We will see you next week. Watch a lot of sport and drink a little bit. See you later.